Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this First Aid Forward product tour. We are so thankful that you chose to spend time with us today to get an overview of this great new product launching from McGraw-Hill. I'm Kaylin Creason. I'm a customer success librarian with McGraw-Hill, and I'll be joined today by some of our other fabulous McGraw-Hill presenters. This includes Bob Boehringer, Director of Medical Test Prep here at McGraw-Hill, as well as Claudia Whitestone, Product Manager for First Aid Forward. Before we get started today, I just have a couple quick housekeeping items. First things first, I promise you're muted. I know some of us are coming back from lunch. I promise I can't hear your carrots crunching or your coffee sipping, so you are muted, don't worry. Second, this webinar is being recorded. You will get a link to the recording if you registered for this webinar following the airing of following this session today. So look for that in your email. Along with that recording, you'll get a link to a survey just to get your feedback about this session today. Finally, if you have any questions, there will be time for Q&A at the end of the session today. So the chat is open. The Q&A is also open. So please put your questions in there. We'll monitor that as we go through the session today. But thank you again so much for your time. With that, let's dive in. We're going to start with a little bit of the history of first aid to set the stage for First Aid Forward. So to take us through that history, we have Medical Test Prep Director Bob Boehringer.
Thank you very much, Kaylin. Yes, I'm excited to talk about this part because the first aid product set is extraordinarily unique. One of the main reasons I would say is that one of the main testaments, I should say, to how relevant the content is the fact that it's been not just used, but really sought after for over 30 years now. So we knew that students had been asking us for a digital version beyond some of the PDFs that they were finding online. So the problem that we were trying to solve with this is that there was no single source at the beginning when Tao Li and Vikas Pashan were doing this way back in the 1990s. Is there was no single source for studying for the USMLE. So they created their own document, which eventually morphed into first aid. Over time, the way they've kept the content relevant is they crowdsource reviews, they crowdsource editions, and any sort of errors, changes to the exam, etc. So we use all that information. It's a culmination of feedback from hundreds, actually thousands of students. And that's how the content stays relevant. And one other thing to say about the content is that over time, the content changes based on how a particular user prefers to learn about a particular topic. So for instance, if it's a process, maybe a bulleted list of key points is not appropriate, and the users would rather see a flow chart. And that's really the philosophy behind first aid. It's not only the blueprint for everything you're going to encounter on the USMLE exam, and quite frankly, in curricula as well. But it's also the content is presented in a way that most lends itself for learning about a particular topic. So that really is what lays the foundation for this new product. Students, as I said, were asking for a way to be able to interact with the first aid content in more of an immersive and a digital way. And so we're going to talk to you today about how we've done that with First Aid Forward on the USMLE exam, and quite frankly, in curricula as well. But it's also the content is presented in a way that most lends itself for learning about a particular topic. So that really is what lays the foundation for this new product. Students, as I said, were asking for a way to be able to interact with the first aid content in more of an immersive and a digital way. And so we're going to talk to you today about how we've done that with First Aid Forward.
Thank you, Bob. Now we're going to do a quick play along at home style survey. So you should be seeing this question up in Zoom. So the question, when was first aid for the USMLE Step 1 originally published? All right, I'm seeing some good guesses. I'm seeing maybe some McGraw-Hill people guessing actually, because I'm seeing quite a bit of um, some good guesses is what I will say. All right, give it another second. All right, perfect. Okay, we're gonna end that poll, and here were the results. The answer is 1989. So the first aid for USMLE was published originally in 1989. All right. We're going to go on to our next part of the presentation, which is getting to the good stuff and showing off what is First Aid Forward. So I'm going to give it away now to Claudia Whitestone to present First Aid Forward.
Hi, everyone. I'm Claudia Whitestone. I'm the product manager for First Aid Forward. So we're going to actually jump into a product demo. So if you guys have any questions in chat, I'm sure my team will be able to help you answer those potentially live. But if you have any questions, please share those in chat. If we don't get them to them live, we'll get them definitely in our Q&A section. So kind of piggybacking off of what Bob said, first aid for the USMLE has a very long history. It is a very well-respected product used by students for many, many years. And they don't only just use it for test prep, but they use it throughout their medical education to help guide their studies, as well as kind of be a reference material to go back to. We've definitely tried to respect and honor the way that they use the first aid for the USMLE text. You see people kind of tearing apart and putting back together this content, and we really try to honor that workflow and work process that students use the text for. So we really try to keep that in mind when we were designing this product. We're really trying to make sure that we're keeping up with the student demands, as well as their kind of changing needs as we're going to a more, digital first age. So that's kind of where we came from, and this is where we are with First Aid Forward. So when students log in, whether they have an individual subscription or if they have access through their institution, this is where all students will land, is on their dashboard page. At the top there, you can see that the main content sets, probably something familiar of the First Aid for the USMLE book, they have access to that content, but they also have access to the additional cases and clinical pattern content. And we'll get into that more a little bit later. At the top here, we also have what we're calling our universal search bar. So again, kind of thinking about how students are using and leveraging this content and the different functionalities is, search is definitely something very important, being able to search something up very quickly and find what they need. So this universal search searches any given topic across the content sets. So it searches content across the main First Aid for the USMLE Step 1 book, but as well as the cases and clinical patterns. You can also notice at the top there too, when students are searching within the platform, it actually gives them context of where the content is getting pulled from with those little breadcrumbs with the public health sciences and evaluation test results, just so when they are searching and scouring through these results, they kind of get a context of where they're clicking through and what specific subjects they're going to be launched into. We also have alternative ways for them to search and navigate the platform with these subject blocks. So if you click out, expand these subject blocks, you can actually search high yield topics within this. And again, being able to target cases and patterns within this view as well. I do want to point out, I'm going to be saying high yield a lot, and I know high yield can be defined many different ways. In this platform, we've defined high yield topics as the high yield topics that were defined within the First Aid for the for the USMLE content that aligns with the USMLE blueprint. So just for context here, when we're talking about high yield, that's what we're really talking about. So you can see here, we can scroll and search in that high yield topic way. But you also may have noticed this quiz practice button. So for this platform, we really wanted to ensure that students have a way to self-assess and self-test themselves. So we built out these quizzes that reside in the First Aid Forward platform. On this screen, you can see that we provide, these basic metrics, progress, attempts, and correct versus incorrect. You can see my attempts below, and as well as the historical score sheets that I could also view here as well. You can also see here below, similar to other maybe QBank platforms you might be familiar with, we have a tutor mode as well as a quiz attempt mode. So they're actually able to, complete a quiz to test themselves, or if they're leveraging quizzes to study, they can launch and utilize that in tutor mode. So I wanted to kind of show you an example of how we are defining and developing quiz questions on the First Aid Forward platform. So unlike other platforms like a UWorld or a Boards and Beyond, these aren't USMLE vignette style questions. These are really more foundational first order questions. So these are testing the students' kind of foundational knowledge before they're moving on to a harder QBank like UWorld or Boards and Beyond. So this is really kind of to help them build up or reinforce any foundational knowledge that they're struggling on. So we're going to head and click my answer and go ahead and click through. And so in tutor mode, you see that, again, similar to other QBanks on the market, you have your question stem, as well as the answer that you provided, as well as the correct answer. But if you scroll down a little bit, you can see that we also have the explanation, which explains why the right answer was right and why the wrong answers were wrong, as well as the educational objective. So we're going to go ahead and go back to that main screen here. And we're going to go ahead and click into the main first aid content that the students will be really clamoring to get. So unlike a static print book, this digital platform enables us to do a little bit more, obviously, with the content than what you can just do with a print book. So you're able to kind of have a little bit more interaction with the pictures, but you also have some very nice accessibility functionality with the read aloud and the ability to change font size. We've also, again, built this platform to honor that workflow that students have. So you're able to actually make a variety of highlights, annotations, place marks, and notes within the platform. So again, still honoring that student workflow of, really marking up that text and, really making it their own. Within the book as content as well, you're able to search. So similar to that main search screen, you're able to search throughout the text. But when you're in a specific title, you're only looking at that specific content set, but you have that similar kind of titles at the top. So you're actually, where you're clicking into when you're clicking into these different search results. You can also navigate the content set like a traditional book. So we do have a more standard table of contents you can scroll through. But the one unique thing about this table of contents is that we have this topics tab. So I'm in Alcapotria, and I'm not going to pronounce that correctly. But as you can see in this topics tab, we have linked the appropriate cases and pattern recognition content that correlate to that main topic. So if we go ahead and click into the case content, this is a case that relates to that main high yield topic in the core book. And again, just wanted to show you kind of the functionalities we've developed to promote that self-interrogation or self-study in the platform. With this case content, you have your traditional case stem, but below you have those kind of evaluation questions that you would see in a normal static book, but we've actually developed them to use them like how students would use in the book. So instead of using a note card to cover them up and reveal them, we have built in that functionality to show hide. So if students are, wanting to self-test, they can have them all closed and then answer and reveal the answers, or if they're studying, they can expand all of them and just read through them to, help them work through these different cases. And if we click through to the pattern recognition, this pattern recognition content is set up very similar. So this pattern recognition content you may have not seen before, but it's grouping like cases with similar symptoms, but maybe differential diagnosis diagnoses or treatments together, again, to help groom that clinical reasoning or clinical recognition skills. So we've did it very similar to the other case content where the evaluations, treatments, and discussions are hidden in that expand collapse section. You also have all the same functionalities in these different content sets as well as annotations, highlights, notes, etc. I did want to point out as we've seen students buy and use this platform as well as in our testings, we've seen a lot of students say that they weren't necessarily always familiar with this content prior to purchasing First Aid Forward, but after purchasing and using it, they recognize the value that this type of content adds to their studies. So we definitely have seen a lot of kind of uptick in usage of this content as we've seen more adoption of this platform. One last thing I want to show you guys before we hop off, we do have the USMLE Step 2 product for First Aid Forward with all the same features and functionality, but obviously with a Step 2 more clinical focus. The content is very similar, but we have the first aid for the USMLE Step 2, as well as the clinical pattern recognition for the Step 2. The one key difference here is the clinical algorithms, which I think is a very unique content set, relatively newer to the market. So we're going to go ahead and launch here. So we have this clinical algorithm content that is set up based like a decision tree, where you're starting with either a presenting symptom or a lab result, and they're walking through students of the reasoning and the decision trees of, doing a lab or testing something, getting a result, what do you do next? And then getting to a final treatment or a diagnosis. So that's kind of the main purpose of this algorithm content. And we've also, again, seen and heard here from students utilizing this content. This was kind of one of their main first exposures to this type of content, but it is really added a lot of value to their studies. So that is the completion of our student walkthrough. I'm going to go ahead and give it back to Kaylin.
Thank you, Claudia, for that excellent walkthrough. As you can tell, it is time for another poll. So you should be seeing that on your screen right now. This question, take a minute to think about it. But what products does your institution purchase to support the faculty and students? At the bottom, there is the option to select other and to write in other if you do select something different than what you see here. I'll just give a minute for that. I'm seeing the votes coming in. I don't know if you all can see the votes coming in, but we've got some good responses. I see a lot for first aid, a lot for UWorld, some others. That's great. Thank you. Awesome. All right, I'll end the poll in maybe 10 seconds. So give your last couple answers here. I won't tell your librarians if you forget one, don't worry. All right, let's see the results for that. So like I said, a lot of first aid, which is really excellent to see. UWorld, Amboss, a little bit of Boards and Beyond, Osmosis, Online Med Ed, some none, and some others. So a great variety of answers. Thanks for sharing that. That's really informative. We are so lucky to have on the call with us today Ryan Coe, who is actually a student who has used First Aid Forward. Ryan, let me give a brief introduction here. So Ryan is a fourth-year student at Oakland University, William Beaumont School of Medicine. And we're so excited for Ryan, too, because just this Friday, big day, as we all know, match day, Ryan was matched to his #1 choice in radiation oncology at the MD Anderson Cancer Center. Yes, so we are truly lucky to have Ryan joining us today to talk about his experiences with First Aid Forward.
Thanks, Kaylin. Yeah, thanks for having me today. I just wanted to chime in about my experience using First Aid Forward and what I can kind of see kind of moving forward with using a product like this to study during medical school. So I think one of the questions that many of you are probably wondering is, how would I integrate First Aid Forward into my studying? And I think if I can take a step back and kind of give you an idea of how I studied throughout medical school and if I were to do it again, also a different approach. So I think really there's like a stepwise progression to learning new information. Generally, you want to scan general information, then you want to test your knowledge of that general information, and then refine that process. So you understand the pathology with a case or pattern recognition, and then in the end, you're reviewing that information and reassessing your ability to retain the information over time. And this is just one example, but in one lecture, you can be presented with 10 different pathologies, and then you have a series of lectures every day. And this, at least in the preclinical setting. So it can be quite a bit of information. When I was back in the preclinical setting, I used first aid. I used other products that were available. And really, I remember the scramble of feeling like, oh man, I've heard from this student who's an upperclassman that this product is really good. I've heard from this student that this product is really good. And there was a bit of a scramble of figuring out what product worked best for me. And ultimately, something that was searchable, like a strong library, something that had relevant cases, something that had a ton of different examples that I could refer to, and also something that I could refer back to very quickly. I felt that first aid, the physical textbook, was sort of the resource I used most. When the clinical pattern of recognition book came out, which was right around when I was studying for step one, I felt that added an additional layer where you could now refine your learning with more of a case-based approach, which was more relevant to the USMLE step exams. And so, this was all physical copies, but I felt like if I just had a searchable copy, if I had something that could give me a numerical or percentage-wise assessment of how I'm actually mastering this material, I felt that would have been a very great product. And so this First Aid Forward was demoed just about a year ago to me, and I had some time to play with it. And I kind of wish that when I was back as an M1, I had something like this to study with. I think one thing that Claudia also was showing in her demo was your ability to assess your progress through questions or through practice quizzes. And I think that right now there's a lot of school administrators who are finding that there has been an increase in step one failure rates. There has been an increase in students pushing step one to the following year or to another semester. And even in my own school, when we were preparing for that step one pass fail transition, our school was trying to figure out a way to gauge how well are students actually progressing through the material so that they're ready to sit for step one. And the way that our school did it was through the CBSE, which is a condensed step one. But I kind of wish that we had some sort of way to gauge our own performance as we're progressing through even the first year and into our second year, getting ready for step one. So I think having that kind of built-in functionality where you can do these first order questions, kind of gauge your progress with some of these more common topics, and then move into the cases and gauge your progress with that. And then also on the back end, if the administrator can see how students are doing overall, you can target, maybe some students need some extra tutoring here, or maybe need a little more assistance in their foundational knowledge. And I think that functionality will help a lot of students in avoiding that really potentially a red flag in their application of pushing a step exam further or not passing on the first attempt. And that can be monumental for a student in their career aspirations. So I think that's just a couple things. I think the library function, the ability to review it from a first order to case-based, to assessing your progress of quizzes, and having it all be searchable within one platform. I think that's really something that I wish I had. And then an additional, I think Claudia also showed the algorithms. So for step two now, which is one of our only scored exams, it's a very good measure to kind of compare students for multiple different medical schools. Every medical school has a different grading schema. Every medical school has a different curriculum. But step two, now being as one of the only objective measures to compare students, at least from a testing standpoint, has become a very important test. And these treatment algorithms is really the core of step two. I found that myself, I would find these algorithms online. For example, I would look up like a basic life support algorithm or working through cardiogenic shock algorithms. And I found those either in question banks or just Googled them myself. And I would make those into flashcards. And I think having them all in one resource where you can search through and find related algorithms, where you can take screenshots, make it into flashcards, maybe even one day have some functionality where you can make flashcards on the product itself. Yeah, I think this helps in expediting or making your studying a lot more efficient. So I think that there's a lot of potential value in the products, and you know, I wouldn't be here doing my testimonial if I didn't feel like you know, the products so far have been helping me, and kind of having it all together is really creating a better opportunity for students in the future. So yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for allowing me to share my testimonial here.
Thank you so much for being here, Ryan. We really appreciate your time and you trialing the product and yeah, sharing what you learned from not only using First Aid Forward, but also your entire preparation for those exams. So thank you. We will have time for questions at the end. So if you have any questions specifically for Ryan, we're lucky that he's going to stick around. So feel free to either put those in the chat or save them for the end for the chat, and we can ask Ryan some questions. Next, we are going to do a demo of the admin functionality in First Aid Forward.
Awesome. Thanks, Kaylin.
Mhm.
Yeah, so like actually Ryan alluded to, so I think it's a great kind of kickoff here, is we do have a admin portion for this product. So we do have, again, the ability to view and monitor that engagement, that activity from an admin perspective. So this is the admin dashboard. We've tried to design it very kind of straightforward for you guys, so it's very simple and easy to navigate. At the top here is your kind of main metrics that I know a lot of faculty we talk to when in development we're kind of mainly concerned about. So that top metrics will kind of follow you, and I'll show you as we kind of click through the different sections of the dashboard. So you have your average read time, your average quiz time, seats claimed, and average score. If you look a little bit above that, there's some filters and search functionality where you can toggle between the main high yield or the main subjects like biochemistry and cardiovascular, similar to the quizzes in the platform itself. And then you can toggle between different date ranges, and you can also search for a specific subject as well in this search bar. If you look at the very tippy top here as well, you have a very direct link to the student view. So if you go ahead and click through, depending on which dashboard you're on, step 1 or step 2, you'll be brought into that particular student view. So we're on step 1. If you go back to the admin dashboard, you have an admin dashboard for step 1 for those users who would be using step 1, and then also for users who would be using step 2. So you can toggle into that one, and then you would get the step 2 student view if you click that button. We're going to go ahead and scroll down this main screen. So for the entire, all of the progress for this dashboard, and I guess let me contextualize these metrics. This is a McGraw-Hill dashboard with test data from our development team. This isn't representative of real student data. So just want to provide that context there. If you're seeing maybe some metrics that seem a little off. So as we scroll down, you see the overall progress graphs here. On the left, you have your circle graph with average score, as well as context between completed and not completed. So these are the students who either have or have not completed the quiz, a quiz at that time. And again, this is showing for all subjects. And then on the right, you have a bar graph of average score based off of the number of attempts that they were on. So you can kind of view that engagement and activity average score over a time period. So over how many times they're taking those particular quizzes. As you scroll down as well, you'll see these trending bars of the kind of the range of performance on any given subject. And then the red and blue colors is the means that if your red indicates the scores are less, that median score is less than 50, and then the blue is the average score is greater than 50%. So if you see those colors change, that means kind of those changes of average or median scores. And if students haven't started to take a quiz yet, this is kind of what you'll see kind of with no data present. You're also able to filter kind of between highest and lowest score on these trending graphs. So we're going to go ahead and scroll back up and toggle into gastrointestinal. And as you can see here, these main metrics stay, but they change with as you're kind of clicking through to different subjects. And then again, you'll see that kind of change as we get further down into the dashboard. You see this stay the same as well, but this is now average score, an average score over attempt for gastrointestinal. Scrolling down even further, you can see then the list of students who have completed or not completed the quiz by using this filter. And then we're actually going to click into a particular student. We're going to call out Yella here. So we're clicking into Yella's performance. And as we've clicked through, you can see we're clicked through into seeing all of the subjects for this particular student. And again, keeping those same metrics up at the top, but now it's for that particular student. You can also, again, search and filter based off subject. So we're going to go filter into gastrointestinal. And as you can see here, we get to a subject specific for this student's screen, keeping those same metrics at the top. But as you scroll down, you can see here, now we have back our progress circle graph for this particular student for this subject, gastrointestinal. And you can see their correct versus incorrect score for these questions. And then on the right here, you can see their progress average score over their attempts compared to the cohort. So these blue lines are the average score of the whole cohort or the class, and then the orange would be that particular student. So you're actually able to compare their engagement or average score on kind of a more cohort level. And then as we scroll down, you can see all of these, any given of these high yield topics and what their performance was on any of these given high yield topics that have questions related to them. So you can see kind of their performance on a little bit more of a granular level. And again, these high yield topics are, again, based off of our definitions within the platform. You can also toggle by attempt. So we're going to toggle to attempt 2. And then you can also view the score sheet for any given attempt. The students have access to their own individual score sheets, but you also have access to the score sheet for any given student. So you can actually look at the given score sheet and again, filter based off of correct versus incorrect. And as you expand these questions, you see the same questions and explanations and educational objectives that the students would see. And that's about it. And then if we could click back, we can get all the way back to that main screen here. So that is our walkthrough of the admin dashboard. Happy to jump back on during the Q&A if there's any particular questions, but thank you guys for your time.
Thank you so much, Claudia. We will definitely be bringing you back in for some questions that I've gotten, which are all great questions. So thank you to everyone who's put in questions so far. Time for one last question to you all before we take on the questions. Let me share this poll. Well, okay. So for some reason, my poll isn't launching, which is fine. You can totally type your answer in the chat because you can see the question, right? So what are some of the key obstacles you encounter when integrating new teaching methodologies or technologies? We've got limited time to learn a new platform, lack of LMS integration, maybe student participation or engagement, or anything else you can think of. So if you want to type your answers in the chat for that kind of poll, I'll give you a few minutes. Yeah, limited time for sure, Mary. Yeah, faculty time to learn. Yeah, Hal, that totally. I think you're going to get a lot of faculty agreeing with you on that one. Even if you agree, throw it in. Anything else? Is it just lack of time that keeps you from using new technologies? Faculty buy-in. That's huge. And yeah, due to learning curve and time again. Already have a platform, a USMLE platform. Yeah, definitely. That can totally play into like literal buy-in, right? Our institutions only have so much money, unfortunately. No, just kidding. Yeah. Anything else? Are your students pretty, when you introduce a new technology to them, are they pretty engaged? Is that, maybe we thought that was an issue and it's really not. That's great. All right. Well, thank you for sharing your answers to that. Student buy-in to new things. Yeah, that is a barrier. Yeah, we thought so. You know, they maybe have products they're already using, right? We went through that list of other products you buy, and we know students use a lot of products to help them prepare. Mitigated by the first aid brand. That's great. So that's mitigating that challenge that there's buy-in for the first aid brand, Hal is saying. That's really good to hear as the people who produce that brand. All right. So now we're just going to talk briefly about, thank you for doing that informal poll. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but we are going to talk right before our Q&A just a little bit about the future of first aid. So I'll turn it back over to Claudia, product manager, to touch on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to wrap up here, kind of the future of First Aid Forward, I think was really just shown in our existing products. As we, continue to look in the future, we're continuing to look to evolve and change the platforms, again, with the changing needs of the students, but the changing needs of the institutions. So we're really looking to support and honor the workflow of the students, but really, again, honor the changing needs of the institutions to support their students, like Ryan was saying. There's changing needs based off of changing test requirements and changing requirements by just student demands themselves. So we're definitely really looking into the future with this platform. This is just the beginning, so very excited to kind of show you guys what's coming next into the future as we continue to develop and iterate on first aid.
Thank you so much, Claudia. With that, we are officially going to open up our Q&A. Some of you have already utilized the Q&A, which I can see. I will pass along those questions. Feel free to use the Q&A or to post in the chat. One prescient question that just came up is, will this webinar be available for others to watch? Yes, we will. This webinar is being recorded, so we can make that. I know it'll be available to registrants. Will we post it publicly, Claudia? I don't see
That's
why
definitely
not.
something we'll consider. And I did see that you guys asked for a copy of the slides. We'll definitely consider posting those slides. I know those slides heavily relied on my product demo. So they may not necessarily make sense in context, but we'll definitely work with the team on what makes sense of posting. So I appreciate that question.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Susan. I appreciate it. All right. So let's see. One question we have that I am not surprised that we have because there's been a lot of buzz about it, is, will First Aid Forward and Boards and Beyond ever work together?
I guess I'll go ahead and take that question. Yeah, we're definitely looking at the possibilities of this synergy that they have. We've heard a lot of students, even with the print content, leverage first aid for the USMLE print book with Boards and Beyond, obviously with all of the references that exist already within Boards and Beyond. There is a reference to a first aid for the USMLE page. So that's a very clear synergy that we have. So we're definitely evaluating what potential that we have in the future. That's really all that I can say right now, but we're definitely not ignoring that possibility. It's not something that, it's not unheard of. We definitely heard a lot from our students that participated in user testing and our betas. They even saw that potential synergy of the very clear parallels of ways of working that these two products support for their workflow.
Thank you. Another question we have, my sales rep said you're thinking about implementing student/class rostering as an enhancement to the product. Any updates on what that could look like?
That is a great question, and definitely, again, something I've also heard from our sales reps. So I've heard from our sales reps directly about that. So it's definitely not falling on deaf ears at all. Our sales team is very great about bringing me these, these blockers or questions that our clients are having. So we are considering a potential rostering solution. We don't know exactly what that looks like right now, but this is something that's been asked, and it is currently on our roadmap to explore what a solution actually looks like. We don't have anything specific right now that I can share.
All right, and then I have one that Claudia, if you want, might give you a chance to show some like magic link stuff if you
Sure.
want. But the question from Kelly is there separate admin access for faculty members, like checking out student quiz results versus librarians' usage statistics? And the reason I think it ties into Magic Link is that with this product, we've reduced a ton of the administrative overhead with just authentication through email domain. I will let Claudia speak to that a little more, but that's how
Yeah,
those two things tied in together.
a little bit. So there is separate access. The admin access is the same though. So we'll actually go ahead and toggle back to the admin dashboard. So this, oh, you get to see my dashboard screen. This admin dashboard is for all types of faculty at the institution. So admins, librarians, teaching faculty. So these metrics are kind of blended together. You can see kind of the engagement metrics being average reading time and average quiz time. So how much are they engaging with the platform and that activity, as well as seats claimed. So again, how many people are actually signing up and utilizing this? And then kind of the more of the faculty focused metrics being, again, these quiz progress and kind of the engagement and the quizzes and that activity around that. So they're kind of grouped together at this point. There definitely, if this is the feedback that we get from the market, there definitely could be a future where there is more of a focused dashboard for these different stakeholders within the medical institutions, but right now they're a little bit blended. So hopefully that answers your question. And I guess to kind of piggyback off what Caitlin said, the access is through what we call implicit access. So what happens is if your institution ends up purchasing it, we grab your email domain, and that's actually how you, faculty and students, get access to this product. So we tie it to your email domain instead of an IP. So you don't have to go in and log back in every 30, 60, 90 days to re-authenticate. You just authenticate with that email domain and you can use it anywhere, which is definitely a benefit to the students, obviously, who don't have to go on campus if they're like, my authentication is expired, I have to go back. Or that's maybe inconvenient for them at that time.
Great, thank you. I have a question now that is maybe up for a few different people to answer, maybe Ryan included. I already see my students use a digital version of First Aid, so why would we want First Aid Forward?
Sure, maybe I can chime in here. So I think the digital version of First Aid is often like a PDF version. And I will say I have had a digital version as well. I can use it to search to find information. But I think the integration of having, say, the quizzes or cases that are built in, a way to kind of engage and gauge how well you've actually mastered the material, that's something that like this readily updated platform will provide. I will say, like, the PDF version is still certainly a good option. I had I think there was just a little bit of inefficiencies with using that technique. So I think that's my comment in regards to using a PDF versus this more integrated platform.
I
Thank you
would
so
say
much,
too
Ryan.
that the whole purpose of First Aid Forward is to create less of a linear approach and more of an immersive approach where you have a multitude of resources that aren't just repeating, but they're presenting the content in a different way so that you've got a much richer source of different materials at your fingertips. And we hear all the time about how students, one of the things that they really said was missing was the ability to test themselves directly on first aid content, to the point that they would take note cards and either cover their screen or cover their page of the book, whichever they were working in, to just see if they were able to complete a passage or complete a flow chart, or name whatever was missing in a particular box or table. So this really takes, this really supports the workflow related to how we've heard students say they like to study and learn.
And just looking forward from that, we're definitely trying to continue to honor that workflow with any new features or functionalities we continue to add to First Aid Forward. So those things that students are doing in the print book, we want to honor, but again, further enhance upon the interactivity and the immersion that they can get in a digital platform.
Thank you for answering that question. Reminder, you can still put your questions in the chat, either for the team or for Ryan or any of us. One other question we had, so we are getting some good questions that are so good that I'm encouraging more. How do you envision students using First Aid Forward alongside UWorld? I guess that could be specifically UWorld or any of those other products we kind of mentioned in our survey.
Ryan, you can go ahead and take that.
Sure, yeah. So I'm very familiar with using UWorld, very familiar with using First Aid. I think the setting of, at least in the preclinical setting, I found that UWorld was not really a great resource. Oftentimes students found other question banks, I think like USMLE RX or Kaplan, there's other question banks out there. But I found that a lot of those were not able to be like compared directly with First Aid. Like if I wanted to review, say, a cardiovascular disease in First Aid and then go straight to USMLE RX, it's very kind of clunky to jump from one product to the next. And also the content sometimes doesn't line up. I think particularly as the question banks seem right now for First Aid Forward, the preclinical setting is kind of all in one on the First Aid Forward product. And then moving into the clinical setting, we've already now learned some of the foundations. We've learned some cases that can prepare us to then take the shelf exams. And oftentimes to test your knowledge in preparation for the NBME or USMLE exams was to do question banks, say, from UWorld. And I think having that integration where you can still review all of your questions, say in any question bank like UWorld or internal medicine, and then also refer to, say, the clinical trees or clinical patterns that are emphasized in the First Aid Forward product. It's a good way to have a library in addition to a question bank. And then also, if you sometimes you'll get very low yield questions, say very rare diseases, or even drawing upon some biochemical pathway that you think is not very clinically relevant, but there's an interaction with a certain medication, for example. Having that information in the library where you can still see how the foundations are interacting with the clinical picture that you're being presented with, I think that's one good way to kind of use a very comprehensive library, something that's interactive in addition to a question bank. I will say that, as someone who just took step two in July of 2023, so just about a year ago, I felt that UWorld is known as a very strong question bank, but I felt that it wasn't everything to kind of get you to the score that you really needed. And oftentimes it's kind of like clinical gestalts that you need to develop. And you don't necessarily develop it by just seeing one case over and over and over in different ways. Sometimes it's testing kind of the deep-seated foundational knowledge that you've developed from a preclinical standpoint. And so I felt that still having my first aid textbook or still having my clinical patterns recognition, understanding the biochemistry, understanding the anatomy, that was what kind of pushed me forward from getting a good score to a very good score. And so I think that's my piece on how to integrate the two. Again, UWorld or other question banks is an excellent product to kind of keep your pattern recognition kind of well tuned. But when you really want to push forward to that next step of mastering the material, having an instinctual understanding of what is going on, you have to have a good foundational knowledge. And I think something that is comprehensive is really a good option there.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Did Claudia or Bob, did you want to speak to that at all too before our next question?
No, I think he really covered it comprehensively. So I think it was best to obviously come from the horse's mouth, let's say.
Yeah, I agree. I would just say the two products can work very harmoniously together.
Beautiful. Well, speaking of discoverability and kind of the harmony between products, there's a question of, will we offer any integration between the new case files and First Aid Forward?
Yeah, I can definitely probably speak to that. So, similar to the boards and beyond question, actually, we're definitely evaluating our potential for kind of continued immersion and kind of interconnectivity that these products may have in the future. So it's definitely something we're considering, but there's nothing that we can share at this time.
Totally fine. Another question about discoverability and availability of the products. Chris says, so the USMLE ebooks package, is that still going to be offered? What about the first aid clerkship books? What's the plan?
I can take this one. It's sort of a long answer, but I'll try to give as short of a response as possible. So we really do want to, we have an existing ebook library, and we really are trying with digital, trying to create a unique experience rather than, just sort of putting the books online. That isn't to say that we've closed the door completely on offering some of these standalone digitally. What I can say with a fair amount of certainty is that the clerkship market has changed pretty significantly over the last, especially couple years, where we're seeing a lot more people relying on question banks and less on books like the clerkship series. And so we're looking to kind of reimagine that content and make it, more relevant and compelling. Not that it's not completely up to date and appropriate right now. It's just the student behavior over the last several years is suggesting that they're relying much more heavily on Q&As. So once we get to the point where we have a good feeling for what direction to take the clerkship titles, then we'll be doing something digitally with them. And I know that's not very specific. And again, if we get, I would say it's very safe to say that if we get enough requests from the market for, say, like the standalone ebooks, it's certainly something that we would, look at and consider. But at this point, our primary focus is kind of elevating the first aid experience so we can take all that great content and really turn it into a much more immersive experience for students.
Thank you, Bob. I think that was a great kind of point to end on because it really tied us back to the beginning of first aid, where you talked about how much this is a student-driven product, and one that's always been literally like input has been given by students to make this the excellent product it is, the first aid books. And then First Aid Forward is that next iteration kind of designed to meet those needs and behaviors of students. So before we wrap up, if there's anything else my co-presenters would like to say, I have one last maybe kind of buzzer question for Ryan, but if there's anything else my co-presenters would like to say, I'd love to hear that before we wrap today.
I'd just like to say and kind of wrap up, thank you guys so much for your time. Please don't hesitate to request kind of a demo or additional questions. Kaylin's putting our contact information up there. So if you guys have any questions or want further information, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Yes, we've got the customer success email linked right there. I'll also put it in the chat. The customer success email, whether it's First Aid Forward or something else, Always a great catch-all email for your McGraw-Hill questions. So if you want to use that for everything, feel free and we will get you to the right people. You can always also, if you have your account manager's email, they're another great resource for you that can always catch your questions and make sure you get those answered. For more information about First Aid Forward, you can go to bit.ly/firstaidforward. It is case sensitive. Otherwise, we all know how to do a Google. You can Google First Aid Forward and find the options to demo, trial, and learn more about First Aid Forward. Like we said, this recording will get sent out to those who registered. Please fill out the survey that you'll get sent along to with the recording. And just in closing today, Ryan, to totally put you on the spot, I just wanted to see if you had any last words you wanted to share with either students considering this product or those people with the institutional purchasing power who are considering this product.
Yeah, sure. And I briefly touched on it in the earlier testimonial. But I was formerly worked with the AMC through the last 4 years. And one of the challenges that I was kind of addressing with the executive team and with other students who were on the admin panel was the rise in step one failures. And I think this has been a trend over the last few years as it transitioned to pass fail. People are kind of asking why. And I think, and I touched on it briefly, and I know Claudia showed a demo afterwards of the administrator support that the First Aid Forward has, where you can gauge your students' progress. That was something that I felt like a lot of different platforms did not have the functionality built in. And I think that's something that is uniquely innovative from First Aid Forward to allow the integration of all the studied, well-respected products such as First Aid, such as the Clinical Patterns Recognition book, and all the other products available to kind of integrate in the students' learning and also give feedback to the administrators of how can we intervene if we feel that the student is falling behind or we feel that the student needs additional support. And I think, I kind of emphasized earlier, step one failure is a red flag for many applicants. And I've had my own classmates who have left medical school or who have taken additional time because they had issues with step one. And I personally didn't want to see anyone else have to go through that. It's just such a huge, milestone to pass for step one. And it can be really upsetting to not have that accomplishment. And so I feel like having that integration is something that is unique. And one of the reasons why I feel strongly that this is a good product moving forward.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I totally put you on the spot, and I appreciate you rising to the occasion and sharing all of your wonderful feedback and expertise. Again, reach out if you have questions, but thank you so much to everyone who joined us today. We really appreciate your time, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.